Ladies and gentlemen, please welcome the Honorable Jessica Rosenworcel.
Good afternoon. I really want to thank the National Center for having me here, and it's really great to be here with all of you. So this is my first time at RES, and I went back and I looked. It's actually the first time the head of the Federal Communications Commission has ever been to RES. Now, that's not the only first I want to share with you today. There's another first. I want you to know I'm the first woman in history to be running the Federal Communications Commission. So the way I see it is that you and I working together, we got to make up for some lost time. And what I mean by that is acting right now to address the state of communications infrastructure in Indian country. Because we have to recognize that when we talk about economic growth in the digital age, every one of those communities that has been left behind and overlooked needs to be in the room and sitting at the table. And I know, because while this is my first time at RES, it's not my first time engaging with Indian country. Since I joined the FCC, I've been in lots of places, New Mexico, here in Nevada, Hawaii, Alaska, many other places in between. In fact, just about last month, I was in California, about 4 hours southwest of here, with the Morongo Bands of Mission Indians. All right, so I've made it a priority for the FCC to be a lot more present and more accessible in Indian country, because those connections we make when we show up are going to help us work with you to bring high-speed internet service to tribal communities everywhere. But of course, getting out and visiting Indian country is only part of it. We got to actually clean up some of our in-house work back home. And one of the first things that I did when I took over was I remade our Office of Native Affairs and Policy. And at the helm, we put Bambi Kraus, who is someone some of you may have known from many, many years in Washington working on tribal issues. And when we invited Bambi to come on, we did something else. We decided to set some new priorities, and I want to talk to you about two of them today. The first is universal access. You see, the way I see it, connecting everyone everywhere is going to be at the heart of the FCC's mission. It doesn't matter who you are or where you live. You're going to need access to modern communications like high-speed broadband and wireless to have a fair shot at 21st century success. And so we got a lot going on at the FCC in Washington to help change that, fix that, and address it in Indian country. Now, let me tell you a little bit of those details. For starters, we are actually, for the first time, building accurate maps about where service is and is not, including on tribal lands. You see, in the past, when the FCC did this, we just took the word from the carriers. We asked providers where they offered service, and that was the end of the story. But we're changing all that now, because we've set up a system so that consumers, state governments, local governments, and tribes can look at that information and speak back. Tell us what's going on in their own backyard. Tell us what a carrier got wrong or where they weren't as honest as we needed them to be. And so with your input over time, we're going to have the kind of data that is going to make it easier for all of us to address deployment gaps on tribal lands. But that's not the only thing we're working on. And I'm going to get technical here for just a moment. And I want to talk about what we've done to help with wireless. And not just wireless, but self-determination in tribal communities. We've got a band of spectrum called 2.5 gigahertz. And you don't have to be an engineer, but this is really sweet stuff. What it does is it has a lot of capacity for broadband, and it propagates really far. And it's perfect for next generation wireless communications like 5G. Now, you all probably know that when it comes to next generation wireless service, tribal lands have not always been at the front of the list. But with the 2.5 gigahertz bands, we're changing that because we decided to set up a window to give those airwaves directly to tribes. I want to explain to you how revolutionary this is. 5 years ago, the Government Accountability Office in Washington published a report. It counted 18 tribal entities in the entire United States that had direct spectrum licenses, direct access to these airwaves. Since the work we've done on the 2.5 gigahertz band, we have 336 tribes that have direct access. 80% of tribes in the United States now have spectrum licenses. That's a huge change in opportunity, self-determination, and the capacity to build it yourselves. So let's continue working together on that. Yeah. Like I said, it was an engineering point, but it deserves to be told. I've got another story I want to tell you, and this one is about tribal libraries. There are several hundred tribal libraries in the United States. I think every single one of them should be connected to broadband, really high-speed broadband. But here's what's better. When I got to the FCC, I realized we have a program to do it. It's called E-rate. Now, E-rate's been around since the Telecommunications Act of 1996. That was a long time ago. I mean, I called the internet the information superhighway back then. Maybe you did too. But in 1996, Congress decided libraries everywhere should get federal support to build really high-speed broadband. And what I learned is not a lot of libraries are using it. So I went and visited one in New Mexico, in the Santo Domingo Pueblo. Now, this is a beautiful place, but it's far from Albuquerque, far from the cities. And I went to this remote rural library, and they had used E-rate funds to connect the library and then connect the community. And this library was a bustling activity center, and the librarian looked like the coolest person on the entire reservation. She knew everyone. She was offering information, helping students, helping elders. And I left and I said, why can't we do this everywhere? So I went back to the FCC and I changed our rules to make sure more tribal libraries can apply. More than that, we've also set up a pilot program to make sure that tribal libraries get the support they need to participate in E-rate. And it's my hope, working together, we're going to be able to connect tribal libraries everywhere. Every one of them should have high-speed broadband. Federal programs are not the easiest. I want you to work with me to help make that happen. All right, so I told you two priorities. One was universal access. Now, the other is affordability. Because if we want to get everyone everywhere connected, one of the things we have to realize is a lot of households on reservations and outside of reservations are struggling to figure out how to pay for gas and groceries. We need to help them get online and stay online. So thanks to the bipartisan infrastructure law, I now have a program to do it. It's called the Affordable Connectivity Program. And here's the thing. It sounds bureaucratic. We call it the ACP, but it provides up to $30 a month to every low-income household in this country to make sure they can afford broadband service. And on tribal lands, that goes up to $75 a month. We are going to change the digital divide because we are going to make sure everyone can afford it. Now, we've got 17 million households that rely on this program now, but there are so many more that could benefit, and so many of those households are in Indian country. So here's the thing. As charming as we are in Washington, we're going to have to work with all of you to get the word out about this program, to make sure people hear about it, know how to sign up, because when they hear about it from trusted people in their own communities, they're more likely to participate. And getting everyone in your communities online, working online, staying online, going to school online, seeking out healthcare and information online is going to make all of us stronger. We are also running new grant programs to help with outreach, including a $5 million new grant program to help tribes do outreach. So I hope you can participate. All right. I've been yelling out at you all of the things we're doing, all the things we want to make happen, and talking about what the FCC is doing for tribal communities. But let me just end by talking a little bit about why. So at the end of last year, I did this tour of tribal lands, and I visited the Pueblo of Isleta. And so right in the center of the community, with the Sandia Mountains rising majestically in the background, what you see is the St. Augustine Church. It's a really, really striking building. This church was built from fieldstone, and it's got this plaster over it that's been bleached white by the southwestern sun. And it's a really grand monument to culture and community. It's super old, really old. When I was there, I learned that it was constructed in 1613. That means this church has stood there for generations, and generation after generation entered its doors to worship. It's a reminder of just how long Native communities have been on this land, and the obligation we have to help them get connected and stay on that land. Ultimately, the first people who've been on this land shouldn't be the last people to benefit from the digital age. And I'm here at Res talking about all these programs we have, talking about how we can work together to make sure that the opportunities of the digital age reach everybody, and tribal lands included. So thank you for having me. Thank you for being here. And I might be the first FCC chair to come to Res, but make sure I'm not the last.